Over 800 formal complaints, a public apology demanded, and endless headlines generated.
Why?
Because a false external threat endangered the specific public image the brand needed to maintain. Yet, when Doria reportedly packed her bags and quietly walked out of the Montecito household months earlier, the response was complete, total silence. No press releases, no statements, no legal threats. Because explaining an actual, internal reality carries a reputational cost that no PR team is willing to pay. That is the ultimate takeaway of this entire story. Public relations operations respond loudly to threats that are false but reputationally dangerous, and they stay completely quiet about truths that are reputationally fatal to explain. Samantha Markle accepts the heavy reputational cost of being labeled bitter and irrelevant for years, continuing to speak out so her accounts remain on public record. Doria Ragland, by contrast, has maintained absolute, unbroken silence throughout, never confirming a single word of the origin story that built a multi-million-dollar brand. None of this offers absolute courtroom proof of every single detail claimed over the past 6 years. But the broader pattern is undeniable. A woman mocked and dismissed by mainstream media described specific structural mechanisms years before those exact mechanisms played out in broad daylight. The story is no longer about who is bitter and who is charming. The story is about pattern recognition, corporate legalities, and the slow, inevitable collapse of a carefully constructed myth. Tom Bower's public admission wasn't just a win for Samantha Markle, it was a turning point for anyone who has been following the story from the beginning. So now I want to ask you, does Bower's vindication of Samantha change how you personally view this entire royal drama? Do you believe Harry was truly oblivious to the operational machine being built around him, or does he deserve full accountability for the choices he made? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to read where you land on this. If you appreciate deep, analytical breakdowns that look beyond standard media noise, make sure to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to Palace Insider with all notifications turned on. There is still so much more to pull apart in this thread, and we're just getting started. Thanks for watching, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next breakdown. There is a very particular kind of indication that arrives years too late to matter socially, but matters enormously for anyone trying to understand what actually happened under all the noise. This week, King Charles sat in a room with Archie and Lilibet for the first time in 4 long years. Most media coverage called it a breakthrough, a story of grace and healing. But there is one woman who described almost this exact scenario years before it ever took place. For years, we were fed a polished fairy tale about Meghan Markle's royal entry. And for years, one woman was publicly mocked, dismissed as bitter, and labeled an irrelevant relative cashing in on fame. Her name is Samantha Markle. But the gap between what she predicted back then and what is now being confirmed in public records is genuinely impossible to ignore. From the carefully managed narrative of Doria Ragland as the devoted single mother, contrasted against quiet corporate Delaware filings, to the strategic role of children as the ultimate leverage point for royal access. Samantha didn't just express resentment. She consistently named the exact timeline gaps and structural mechanisms that are now coming to light. Even famed investigative biographer Tom Bower publicly admitted, "We laughed at Samantha, but she was right." Was Prince Harry completely blind to the commercial and legal apparatus being built right under his nose? Or did he knowingly participate in a narrative that is now fracturing from the inside? Today, we're looking past the shiny tabloid headlines, analyzing the quiet corporate documents, and connecting the dots that most media outlets refuse to touch. Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and let's walk through the evidence together. To understand how this narrative was constructed, we have to go back to where this public story genuinely began. It didn't start with tell-all interviews, courtroom battles, or Netflix docuseries. It started with a single, carefully framed image from May 2018 at Windsor Castle. On Meghan Markle's wedding day, every camera on the planet was pointed at one woman walking alone across the manicured castle grounds, Doria Ragland. Dressed in mint green, composed, serene, and solitary. There was no visible family around her, no chaotic entourage, just a quiet mother standing in the eye of a global storm. That single image did considerably more structural work for the Sussex public brand than almost anyone watching at the time realized. It became the bedrock foundation upon which their entire public image would rest for years afterward. The contrast was striking, and it certainly wasn't accidental. On that very same day, the Markle side of the family was spiraling in the press, embroiled in staged paparazzi photos, missed international flights, and chaotic competing interviews. In stark opposition to that public messiness stood Doria. From that moment forward, she functioned as a human protective shield built directly into the brand architecture. Criticize Meghan's character or upbringing, and by implication, you are criticizing the quiet, dignified woman who raised her. That narrative protection held firm for years largely because Doria maintained complete radio silence. Not a single unscripted appearance. Not a single uncontrolled quote. The public version of Doria, warm, simple, devoted, the quiet single mother who raised a daughter all on her own, was consistently and meticulously managed. The public narrative offered something clean and emotionally satisfying, a self-made woman who had overcome a complicated family dynamic, guided by a loving mother whose quiet dignity contrasted sharply with the noise around her. It was a compelling story, the exact kind that generates deep public sympathy and fierce brand loyalty. However, here is the fundamental problem with a narrative built that cleanly around real human lives. Simple stories often erase complicated realities. And complicated realities have a habit of eventually floating back to the surface. Anyone who actually lived inside that household was bound to notice the massive gap between the sold version and the lived one. And that brings us directly to Samantha Markle. When Samantha first began speaking out, the media and the public quickly labeled her a bitter, jealous half-sister looking for her 15 minutes of fame. But if you look closely at what she actually said over the years, a very different pattern emerges. Samantha didn't just drift into vague, emotional grievance or dramatic mudslinging. Instead, she kept returning to specific, checkable timeline details year after year. Samantha pointed out repeatedly that their father, Thomas Markle, was the primary parent who raised Meghan from roughly age 12 through 18. He was the one paying for elite private schooling, driving her to dance classes and acting auditions, and funding the early stages of a career that was later credited almost entirely to Meghan's independent drive. According to Samantha's accounts, Doria's presence during those specific formative years was far more intermittent than the devoted single mother narrative allowed the world to believe. Now, to be completely fair, Samantha Markle is not a neutral source. She has her own complex personal history with her family and her own motives for speaking publicly. That is an important detail to keep in mind. But what makes her claims so difficult to dismiss purely as personal resentment is the sheer consistency of her accounts. Pure grievance usually shifts, exaggerates, and changes color over time. Samantha's timeline of events, however, remained rock solid across years of public scrutiny. While the media remained hyper-focused on shutting down Samantha, something quietly transpired in the background that virtually no royal reporter or mainstream outlet caught in real time. In 2022, Doria Ragland, whose entire public persona was built around being a humble yoga instructor and compassionate social worker, someone existing completely outside the realm of commerce, reportedly took on 3 high-level corporate titles simultaneously at a Delaware-registered business connected to Meghan: Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, and Secretary. There was no press release, no public announcement, no glowing Instagram post. The exact same media outlets that analyzed every detail of Meghan's outfits and nail polish managed to miss 3 executive corporate titles landing at once. A Delaware incorporation is not casual paperwork. Delaware is a specific legal jurisdiction chosen very deliberately by corporations and high-net-worth individuals for maximum liability protection, advantageous tax structures, and intense privacy protection. It is the type of legal move executed by people who fully understand financial structures and long-term brand building. The timing of these filings lined up with a crucial window, the exact period when Meghan was constructing her independent commercial identity after stepping back from royal duties. Around that same time, Doria was also presented publicly as the exclusive recipient of the very first jar of strawberry jam from Meghan's lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard. The jam jar told one story, a sweet, intimate moment between a loving mother and daughter. The Delaware filing told a vastly different story, one of legal maneuvers, corporate structures, and calculated asset protection. The distance between those two versions is precisely the gap Samantha Markle had been pointing toward for years. It was sitting right there in public legal records, waiting for anyone to actually bother looking. Now, to maintain balance, corporate involvement of family members isn't automatically sinister. Plenty of legitimate, high-profile businesses place trusted family members in formal executive roles for practical reasons: privacy, trust, and operational continuity. It is entirely possible that these filings reflected a routine, sensible family business decision rather than a deliberate attempt to mislead the public. However, even under the most generous interpretation, the Delaware filings prove one undeniable fact: the simple, singular public narrative presented to the world was, at minimum, incomplete. As the commercial ventures designed to anchor the Sussexes' independence began to hit turbulent waters, Doria's role within the household reportedly shifted from a quiet, symbolic figurehead into something far more operationally central to their daily lives, setting off a sequence of events that would eventually fracture the household from within. When you build an empire on narrative perfection, the structural danger isn't just that people might stop believing the story, it's that the real world eventually demands real deliverables. By mid-2023, the initial honeymoon period of high-profile, multi-million-dollar Montecito streaming contracts began to collide directly with corporate deadlines. Netflix wanted high-yielding, captivating content. Spotify wanted consistent podcasts. Publishers wanted continuous public intrigue. But human lives do not naturally produce limitless commercial narrative without massive internal strain. As those pressure cooker business deals began to falter, highlighted by high-visibility corporate breakups and public executive friction, the internal dynamics within the Sussex household underwent a dramatic shift. Doria Ragland, who had spent years as a quiet, reassuring background figure, was reportedly brought into the center of the operational matrix. When things get difficult, high-profile figures don't turn to PR agencies. They turn to the tiny handful of people they actually trust. Doria wasn't just a mother figure anymore. According to multiple California reporting threads, she had become an anchor inside the physical home, managing domestic flow, acting as a person, and providing an emotional buffer between a couple under immense global scrutiny and the chaotic outside world. For a period, this arrangement seemed to hold the house together. But when corporate pressure mounts, personal alliances inside a domestic environment almost always feel the heat. It became a quiet, unannounced shift that almost no major American network covered, yet sent shockwaves through royal investigative circles. Reports began circulating that Doria had quietly packed her belongings and moved out of the Montecito compound, relocating back to her longtime Los Angeles residence. There were no public statements, no legal commentary, and no dramatic teardown articles. Just a sudden, unexplained return to distance. Why does this sudden operational exit matter so much? Because it directly mirrored the exact warning cycle Samantha Markle had outlined years prior. Samantha's core contention was never just about childhood grievances. It was a specific structural relationships in this sphere function on strict utility. When a person's presence serves a brand purpose, they are elevated, defended, and placed front and center. But the moment that presence becomes complicated, redundant, or creates internal tension, the boundary drops instantly, and the silence returns. This was the exact point where investigative biographer Tom Bauer delivered his most striking assessment. Bauer, a biographer famous for systematically dissecting corporate titans, politicians, and media moguls, had spent years sifting through hundreds of interviews and legal documents regarding the Sussexes. During a broadcast interview following fresh revelations about the internal mechanics of the Montecito household, Bauer made a statement that shocked royal commentators who had spent half a decade dismissing the Markle family. He noted that while the mainstream media had spent years mocking and laughing at Samantha Markle as an unhinged, attention-seeking tabloid fixture, time, and evidence were forcing an uncomfortable reality to light. Bauer's point was clear. Samantha's tone may have been sharp and personal, but her fundamental operational map of how her family dynamic functioned, the precise sequence of elevated utility followed by sudden distance, was proving to be stunningly accurate. The very people who had been laughed out of television studios years ago were watching their exact predictions unfold live on global television. This brings us to the ultimate leverage point in this entire saga, the element that bridges the commercial collapse in California directly back to the ancient corridors of Buckingham Palace. The children, Archie and Lilibet. From the moment the Sussexes stepped back as working royals, access to the king's grandchildren ceased to be a simple family affair. It became the single most powerful point of strategic leverage in modern royal history. Without royal access, a global brand attached from the British monarchy slowly loses its core currency. You can launch lifestyle brands, host glamour galas, and produce streaming shows, but in the